What if I told you that there was a Fortnite player who was only 13 years old who caused every player you face in a public lobby today to be the best fighter? A player featured on BBC News, qualified for the Fortnite World Cup 3 times, and even won FNCS. This player is Mongraal, and to find out how he changed Fortnite, we have to go all the way back to England on August 13th, 2004. Kyle Mongraal Jackson started playing PC games at a very young age. He would begin to compete in games like Call of Duty and Halo, but eventually he would find the Battle Royale style game called H1Z1, and on August 19th of 2017, Mongraal would stream for the very first time. But Fortnite hadn't even been released at this point, and Mongraal's first ever stream was on CSGO. He would also stream Battlefield, Call of Duty, and H1Z1. When Fortnite Battle Royale was released on September 26, 2017, it took the entire world by storm. But Mongraal was enjoying other video games, and this would change on January 14th of 2018, a few months later. Mongraal would go live for the very first time on Fortnite. Like many others, he became obsessed, and he would even post his first ever YouTube video on April 10th of 2018 titled How to Push High Ground. Oh shit! In the early days of Fortnite, people didn't really build, at least not like we know it today. They might build a wall, a ramp, or even a fortress, but Mongraal was using builds as we know it today. He was ahead of every player and would even stream every day. He would average only 10 viewers, but things wouldn't stay this way. A massive gaming organization named Team Secret saw just how talented Mongraal was, and they decided to sign him. But this news was quite shocking because Mongraal was only 13 years old at the time, and this news was so big, even BBC News covered it.
This 13-year-old is potentially a lucrative future career. Kyle Jackson is so good at Fortnite that he's been signed to play with a team of professional gamers.
Without knowing it at the time, this would change Mongraal's life forever. Once this interview was published, Mongraal went from 10 live viewers to over 1,000 and would grow exponentially. This was mainly because of his crazy mechanics and just how dominant he was at solo squads. He would upload 30+ kill games on YouTube, getting millions of views, because no one was this good. But there was still an issue. Mongraal couldn't compete in official Fortnite tournaments. During this time, Epic didn't allow players under the age of 16 to play in competitive tournaments, but luckily for Mongraal, he was invited to compete in a different Fortnite event that was hosted by a third party called Friday Fortnite. For those of you who weren't around during this time, every week creators and celebrities were invited to compete in 2v2 kill races for a $20,000 prize pool. We had creators like Tfue, Ninja, Nick830, and so many others who played in these tournaments. Luckily, since it wasn't an official Fortnite tournament, there was no age requirement, so Mongraal was able to play. Mongraal and his teammate the Mentos won the week, earning $10,000 in week 6, and because of this newfound success, Mongraal was averaging over 10,000 viewers. If Mongraal's career wasn't already set, the next announcement would change his life forever. On February 22nd of 2019, Epic Games announced the Fortnite World Cup, 10 weeks of qualifier rounds ranging across solos and duos with a $10 million prize pool, and on top of that, a giant LAN tournament in New York City with an additional $30 million prize pool. And while this was announced, they also lowered the age requirement from 16 years old to 13 years old. This meant that Mongraal was actually able to compete in official Fortnite tournaments without having to worry about being disqualified for being too young. Immediately, Mongraal started to grind harder than ever before, as he wanted to solidify himself as the best in the entire world. But the only challenge in his way was that he needed to actually qualify, and he couldn't do this alone. He needed to find a duo so he could qualify for duos, as a big portion of the tournaments were in the duo format. This is where Mongraal would find Mitro. Without knowing it at the time, they would become the best fighters in the game. In the very first tournament they would play together, they won, earning $3,000. Following this was the World Cup warm-up, where they placed third, earning $1,500, and honestly, no one was surprised. Going into the World Cup, Mongraal was seen as one of the best, if not the best in the region. But with all this pressure, the only thing that mattered was if you could perform at the highest level. And in week 1 of the World Cup qualifiers, Mongraal placed 16th, finishing just short of qualifying for the World Cup. So going into week 2 alongside Mitro, they knew they would have to give it their all. And that's what they did. They placed second, securing their ticket to New York to compete for a $30 million prize pool. But even with all the success, how can he be seen as the best if he couldn't qualify in solos? So in the upcoming weeks, he made sure to grind harder than ever before so he could qualify for duos and solos, and it wouldn't be easy either. In the following week 3, he wouldn't come close to qualifying, and this would continue in week 5 and 7. And in the week 8 of duos, Mongraal and Mitro were able to double qualify for the World Cup duos, but he still had a job to finish. Mongraal was struggling in solos, which was quite surprising. With only one more chance to qualify for solos, Mongraal gave it his all, and he had pulled off one of the greatest clutches in Fortnite history.
I don't think so. The drop in. gets the shot off and gets the elimination. Mongraal literally putting on a clinic of why you need to pay attention to what's going on.
Everybody,
are you kidding me?
Just fell.
Picks up 3 balls.
Launch pad, he's gonna launch pad off. Oh my goodness, are you serious? 13 eliminations, there's still 4 players left, including him. Add it down! No way are you doing this right now, Mongraal! No way! Top 3 situation now. Gonna get the time for the minis. Still needs to find 2 more. Not sure who he's fighting. It's Alec on high ground and then Zur. Mongraal took down every single player that we talked about earlier in the lobby. And now reloading the double RPG as well. Zur's gonna go down in another one. Mongraal, are you kidding?
He would go into qualifier and he had showed the world how dominant he was. But right before the World Cup, Mongraal had a massive announcement to make. Although he was known as Secret Mongraal at the time, his announcement would change his career forever. And that was that Mongraal had joined FaZe Clan, which is a dream come true for any gamer. With his newfound support of FaZe Clan, Mongraal had one goal in mind, and that was to dominate the World Cup finals. On July 28th, 2019, Mongraal and Mitro packed their bags to travel to New York to compete in the World Cup. And without letting the pressure get to him, Mongraal would go on to place 13th in solos and 6th in duos. With these 2 amazing placements, Mongraal took home $375,000, which is life-changing money for anyone, let alone a 14-year-old kid. But the second the tournament was over and Mongraal got home, he immediately went back to grinding. And Fortnite announced a new tournament of the season, which was the first edition of the FNCS, and the game mode was trios. Mongraal and Mitro picked up Benji Fishy. They were the best fighters in the game, and this would be apparent in the qualifiers because they placed second, first, and first once again, earning $134,000 each. Not only was this trio the best in the region, they were very entertaining, creating some of the most iconic clips in Fortnite history.
Aqua on me! Come on, Aqua! Dance! Stop!
As expected, they won their heat, and going into grand finals, they were seen as favorites to win. But this wouldn't go as planned. They finished in a disappointing 10th place because the team was griefing them with mechs. Going into chapter 2, the game mode had switched to squads, and everyone expected the MMB trio to pick up Mr. Savage. While they did try it out, they wouldn't do well in scrims, and Mongraal and Benji Fishy decided to team up with Wolfies and Nate instead. They would finish just short of winning, placing second, earning $30,000. But this wasn't enough. Mongraal still wanted one thing so badly, and that was to win an FNCS title. Duo FNCS came around, and Mongraal decided to stick with Benji Fishy. They were favorites to win, but they wouldn't live up to the expectations because they wouldn't even make the grand finals. Then in the solo invitational that same season, he got 26th, once again not performing up to his standards. People began to wonder if Mongraal would ever achieve his dream of winning an FNCS, but he kept trying. Chapter 2 season 3 was solos again, and he would place 16th. While this wasn't bad, it wasn't what he wanted. But then going into chapter 2 season 4, the god trio Mongraal, Mitro, and the previous season solo FNCS winner Tayson would form. We all know Tayson is a GOAT of Fortnite now, but back then there wasn't much certainty of how good he was in team game modes. Regardless, they were looking strong going into the FNCS qualifiers, and they would decide to land at Stark Industries. It was the best POI by far with the best loot. In the FNCS qualifiers, they placed 7th, 1st, and 11th. Then they would place 4th in their heat, securing their spot into the grand finals. October 31st, 2020, day 1 of the FNCS grand finals began, and let's break it down. Game 1, Mongraal solo clutched to 7th. Game 2, Mongraal, Mitro, and Tayson did what they were expected to do, and that was to win.
Let's go!
Game 3, Mongraal would go out early and Mitro would pop off with a 3rd place solo clutch. Game 4, Mongraal would solo clutch to 6th. Going into the final game of day 1, they wanted to create a large gap between 1st and 2nd, but they would start to get contested off spawn. They would go on to win the off spawn easily and perform a masterclass.
1 HP.
After day 1, they were in 1st place by 30 points, so going into day 2, they would still have to do good if they wanted to hold on to 1st. The first game of the day was game 6 and they placed 4th. Game 7, they would go on to close out the game. At this point, it looked like there was no way that they wouldn't win, but this was about to change. Thomas HD, Flick, and Anas decided to land on them off spawn. Because of this, Mongraal, Mitro, and Tayson began to struggle, gaining only 8 points in the next 4 games. Going into the final game, they went from a 54-point lead over 2nd place to only 20, so there was still a chance that they could lose. So they decided to make a risky decision to change the outcome by landing Sweaty Sands on the 2nd place team. Ultimately, this paid off and they secured their FNCS win. What was even more impressive was that Mongraal streamed the whole tournament, averaging over 90,000 viewers. You would think from here Mongraal would continue to dominate, but this was the start of his downfall. Following this win, Tayson decided to drop Mongraal and Mitro because they weren't taking practice seriously. This meant that Mongraal and Mitro needed to find a new third, and the obvious choice was Benji Fishy, which they did, but they split up after doing horrible in week 1 of FNCS, and they would fail to qualify for heats, and this would happen again in the following season. In Chapter 2 Season 7, he qualified for heats but failed to make the grand finals. People began to wonder what happened to Mongraal. How did he go from an FNCS winner to not even making grand finals? We can assume that he stopped grinding and would get demotivated after performing horrible, and in Chapter 2 Season 8, he once again failed to make grand finals, and the same thing happened in Grand Royale. In Chapter 3, Mongraal and Mitro didn't even make it past opens. By this point, everyone realized it was the end of Mongraal's career. He wouldn't stream consistently, and when he did, he streamed Valorant, resulting in a decrease in viewership, and soon Mongraal's streams would end altogether. For the next year, Mongraal went missing, but this would change on August 11th, 2023 because Mongraal posted a YouTube video titled Mongraal Reveals Future Plans and Daily Routine. In the video, he talked about stuff that was very important to him. These included taking care of his mental health, working out, and building discipline. These were amazing changes, but no one knew if Mongraal would come back to Fortnite. In October of 2023, Fortnite announced they were bringing back OG Fortnite. Everyone was excited to take a trip down memory lane, and this included Mongraal, because on October 31st, 2023, Mongraal tweeted Fortnite OG could be the start of a new era, but no one really knew if he would be making a full return or just playing for the month of the OG season. At first, he was rusty, but the important thing was that he looked happy playing again. Soon, Chapter 5 was released, and Mongraal and Mr. Savage made a massive announcement that shocked everyone. They announced that they were playing FNCS together. During this time, Mr. Savage was much better than Mongraal, so some people were confused, but they knew if they put the time in, they could compete at a high level. They had one goal in mind, and that was to qualify for the Fortnite Global Championship. Leading into the FNCS, they had put a lot of time in to improve, and to help out, they hired BloodX to be their coach. For those of you who don't know who BloodX is, he coaches some of the best players in the world, including Clix, Tayson, Queasy, and Veno, and we're about to see if their time practicing would pay off. In the FNCS qualifiers, they placed just barely good enough to qualify for the lower bracket. On day 1 of the lower bracket, they wouldn't perform well, finishing in 86th, but they still had another chance on day 2, where they would place 12th, earning their spot into the upper bracket. In order to make the grand finals, they needed to place in the top 25, and they wouldn't qualify because of a tiebreaker, but there was still one final chance to qualify where they needed top 15 or it was over. This is where the perfect script kicked in.
Can he win this? With 0 builds? Surely not. Just don't die to TD. No! Yes! No! Yes! No! Yes! 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 Oh my god, yes, he's clutching so hard! 80 points! Let's f***ing go! Oh my god, he's gonna win! Oh my god! TD can't get up, he wins! It's the opposite of the Savage Shadow Bomb! They just made grands!
Mongraal and Mr. Savage qualified for the grand finals, but they were contested and they would finish in 39th. Although this wasn't good, considering how fast they improved in such a little time, there was potential. In the following season, they qualified for the lower bracket once again, but they were unable to make it to the grand finals. With there being only one more FNCS to qualify for the Fortnite Global Championship in Fort Worth, they knew they needed to go big. Since EU and NA both had 10 qualification spots into the Global Championship, Mongraal and Mr. Savage announced that they were moving to Dallas to compete in NA's FNCS. Most people doubted them, so they knew they had to prove them wrong. In the qualifiers, they placed 72nd and 58th, which secured their spot into the lower bracket once again. There was a 3-week break in between the qualifiers and the lower bracket, so they wasted no time and immediately began to practice, and it would pay off. In the duo cash cup right before the lower bracket, they placed 6th, which was very impressive. In the lower bracket, they placed 2nd, easily qualifying for the upper bracket. In the upper bracket, they were contested, but they still managed to finish in 8th place. Now, all they needed was to place top 25, and they placed 10th, earning their spot into the grand finals. Heading into the grand finals, they were looking very strong, until Fortnite made a massive announcement, and that was that the cactuses wouldn't respawn, which their game plan heavily revolved around. Before the change, the cactuses replenished 30 health and would respawn, so they would trade Storm Surge. And because of this last second change, Mongraal and Mr. Savage finished in 28th place, meaning they didn't qualify for the global championship. Going into the current season, Mongraal and Mr. Savage are continuing to duo, and they are looking good. Hopefully we can see Mongraal and Mr. Savage win at FNCS together in the near future. But if you want to watch a video similar to this one, feel free to click on this video.